All right, everyone. I'm recording now. For this workshop today, we're going to make a very sort of a simple game in Unity. And my goal for today is to make something that's really simple, but also to try to get you to upload it somewhere so that you can share it with other people so that they can see it too. So not only are we going to make something, but I would like to squeeze in sort of getting you to upload something somewhere. The amazing Allison is helping me out. She is a previous student of mine and has helped me with this kind of stuff before and is all around brilliant person. So she is going to monitor the chat a lot. It's very hard for me to like program and be entertaining and monitor the chat and stuff like that. So Allison's going to monitor the chat and stuff like that. So, and again, if you have a question, it's great to write it publicly in the chat because I guarantee other people are having the same problem you're having. So if you have some error message that you're missing a semicolon or some squiggly bracket or something, I guarantee 3 other people are having the same problem. So if you are having a problem and something's not working, you can put it publicly in the chat and other people might benefit from seeing what worked for you. You know, since we can't run around to all your computers and help you out and stuff like that. All right, so I am going to share my screen. And I am going to open up Unity Hub. So Unity Hub is a, basically with this Unity Hub, you hopefully have downloaded and installed Unity and sort of all of your projects are here. You can have different versions of Unity installed. So if you get very serious about this and maybe some old game you wrote needs an older version of Unity, you can keep that on your computer and a new version also if you need to. For today, we're just gonna hit new to create a new project and make sure that you select 2D. We're gonna create a 2D project today. Unity originally was for making 3D things and they added 2D a bunch of years ago. So make sure you select 2D. It might select 3D by default. So select 2D. And for the project name, I'm just gonna call it Dodge Game. You're welcome to call it something else, but I think Dodge Game will work. And hit create. And this will sort of create the default project layout. And there we go. When I create a new project, it takes a little bit sometimes here.
Hey, sorry, I missed it there. Did you select 2D or 3D?
2D.
Okay, thanks.
So if your Unity opens and it doesn't look like mine does here, you can change, this is a certain layout. And what's really great about Unity is all of these tabs and windows are all movable and dockable. And right now I'm on a very small screen that I use for my screen sharing. But if you have a large monitor, you know, you can sort of place these tools in different layouts. But just to get your Unity to look like mine, that way you're not hunting for things. If you go to the top right corner, you'll see layout. And if you on layout choose tall, you'll see it's like 2x3 for default. If you choose tall, your layout will look almost like how mine does. So I went to the top right corner, I clicked layout, and I chose tall for this kind of layout that I have. And there's one more thing we need to add in, and we'll be ready to start. If you go to Window and then General, you'll see Console. And if you click this, Window, General, Console, if you click this, it will sort of pop up this floating window here, but we can click on the tab part in the top left corner and sort of drag it to the bottom right of my screen. So I sort of dragged this console here. So again, I went to Window, General, and then Console, and I clicked on the little tab and I put it in the bottom right corner. And the console gives us our debugging information. If you've done any computer programming and you have an output window or what happens when you print and stuff like that, this is that output window where we can print things. And it will also show us error messages and warnings and other kinds of stuff like that. So I want to just kind of give you just a tour or reminder. We have on the top left, we have our a tab that's called Scene, and the Scene view is our sort of I don't know, God mode or something, where we can arrange things and place things in our scene. You'll see there's a little camera in the middle, and there's sort of this white box. And this white box is what the camera can see right now. And when you, if you tell someone you like first-person games, or you like third-person games, or you like top-down games, or you like side-scroller games, whenever you say those things, you're describing the camera. So the camera is what lets us see what's in our game, what's inside of our world right now. So we can actually put things far to the left, far to the right, above and below, and our camera can move around and scroll across. We can attach it to our player and all these various things. But in general, with this scene, you sort of have this camera, and for a 2D game, it's kind of a flat camera. So the scene view will be going back to and placing things. If you click on Game, this is what our game looks like right now. It's not terribly exciting, but if you were to ship this game right now and somebody was to download this off of Steam and run this, this is what your game would look like right now. They would just see a blue square. While we're here on this Game tab, where it says Free Aspect, I want you to click there, and I want you to change this to Standalone 1024 by 768. So when we upload our game later, we're going to set it to be these dimensions. So where you see Game, Free Aspect, just click on that and change that to Standalone 1024 by 768. And I'll sort of make mine bigger here. This way we have a fixed size to work with. So this is what our game looks like right now. It's just a blue square. On the right side where it says hierarchy, you can sort of hit this little triangle and bring something down. The hierarchy is what is currently in the current scene. So if we had level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, each one of those would be a scene. Level 1 would be a scene, level 2 would be a scene. And those scenes would have things in them: a camera, AI, collectibles, the player itself, all these other objects and things. So the hierarchy is what is actively in the current scene that we're working on. When we work on level 2, there'll be some other stuff in there and so on. If you click on main camera, you'll notice on the right side, this is called the inspector. And when you click on the camera, you'll see the camera has a position, that is the X, Y, and Z. It has a rotation, which is X, Y, and Z, and it has a scale, which is X, Y, and Z also. And it has this component called a camera attached to it. And there are some parameters here on the camera and how far it can see and its dimensions and stuff like that. The one thing I think I would maybe do at this moment is if we click on camera and go to background, I'm just gonna choose a different background color. So I'm just clicking on this dark blue here. And I think I'm gonna, I really like these dark gray colors because I'm not very creative with colors. But I'm just gonna change my background to some other color. So in Unity, if you've done computer programming and you have objects, and those objects, you have an animal object, and then descendant from the animal object, there is like a cat object, and then there's a dog, a fish object, and so on and so forth. When we're doing this game programming, we don't use inheritance. Instead, we add components to things. And you'll see as we work with some of these other objects how we're always attaching components to things. So our camera is a game object, and it has a camera component on it. That was a very long way for me to say that. In the bottom where it says project, these are the files in our project. So the top area, the hierarchy, is what's in the current scene. And the bottom is the project view. This is all of the files we have and all of our assets. Assets are sound effects, music, sprites, code, anything that would be used to put our game together. Okay. So the first thing I'd like to do is, so for that dodge game, everyone saw what the game looks like. We're sort of dropping things from the sky and moving out of the way. The first thing I want to do is in my assets folder, down in the project area, I want to hit plus and choose folder. And I want to add a sprites folder. So the sprites are our graphics for 2D. We usually call them sprites. So like Mario from Super Mario he's a sprite. And all those little moving characters are all sort of sprites. I'm going to click on the sprites folder. And when I have the sprites folder selected, I'm going to hit plus. And I can go to plus and then sprites, and I can create a square. And this is basically, instead of me going into Photoshop, creating a square and dragging that square into my project, it's sort of making a graphic of a square for me. While we are in our sprites folder here, I am going to hit plus. And for the player, let's go to plus then sprites. We're going to use a triangle for our player. So I'm going to use plus sprites and then triangle. You could make your own graphics in some art program and bring those graphics in here. You can use some kind of editor and drop things in. I just wanted to do something quick, so I'm using these pre-made things. So now that we have this square and this triangle, I want to bring the square into my scene. So let's click on the square, and we can, if I have the scene view open here, I can drag this square right onto my scene. You can use your, if you're on a laptop, for instance, you can use a 2-finger scroll to zoom in. If you have a mouse with a scroll wheel, you can use the scroll wheel to zoom in. So right now, I just put this square here. And if I click on my game view, this is what the game looks like right now. So the scene view is sort of us laying out things, and the game view is like a preview of what our game looks like. If you hit play in the top middle, if you hit play, this will basically, this is our game now. So if we hit play, this is our program is running right now. And again, we have a lot of stuff to do. Make sure you hit play again so you are not playing right now. So make sure you are not playing right now. I'm not playing right now, okay? So let's go back to the scene, and I just wanna show you what some of these tools are in the top left. If you click on the hand tool, you can sort of click and move around your scene. For instance, if I wanted to move over to the right or to the left, you can use this hand tool and sort of click and move around. So I'm not moving things, I'm just moving my view as an editor around. If I have the square selected and I click on this move tool here, I can use these handles to move the square around. If we were working in 3D, there would be another sort of arrow to work the Z dimension. This next one is rotate, and if I click that, you see I can sort of rotate my object with that. And the next one is there is a sort of a rectangle, a scale tool, and there's a rectangle tool which you can sort of, change the shape of your object this way. Now, if you just messed up everything, so if you look on the right side where this object is, you see it says position X, Y, and Z. Maybe you can fix this. I can type 0, and maybe I'll make the Y 4. And for the rotation, I can put 0, 0, 0. And for the scale, I can put 1, 1, 1. And that will sort of, you can kind of reset things if you sort of messed up. Hit save, go to file, and then save. Unity doesn't save automatically. You need to get in the habit of hitting save every once in a while, especially before you hit run, I think is a good time. Cool. I want to make sure, how did I get the square? I went to sprites, right click. I'm sorry, sprites, hit plus. Sprites, square. Is anyone not at this point? Is anyone not at this point where they have a little square sitting there? Everyone's cool. We're doing a great job. If you click on another object besides, so this, oh, that camera preview box. I don't know if there's, you might be able to, in the gizmos area, that might be in there somewhere. Okay. So we have a square here, and it's not really doing anything. So there's a couple of things we want to do. When we hit play, it's just kind of sitting there. And what I want to happen is I want this to sort of fall. I want it to fall with gravity. So I have square selected. I am going to hit add components. So again, you'll notice that things are being built from components. So right now there's a sprite component on here. I'm going to hit add component, and I want rigid body 2D, R-I-G-I-D body 2D, rigid body 2D. So I had the square selected, and I checked add component, and I did rigid body 2D. Unity started as a 3D engine, and the 2D stuff was added later. That's why it doesn't say 3D for the other thing. So a lot of the 2D stuff says something 2D, but the 3D stuff just says what it is. So again, we added a rigid body 2D. Now, if I hit play now, you'll see that the rigid body gives the object gravity. So what a rigid body does is it lets you apply forces to things. So if we want to push something, if we want something to hit something and then it could bounce off of something. If we want some kind of force like gravity, we are going to add that rigid body, and that rigid body is what makes something, it lets you have forces on things. When you have a huge scene and hundreds of objects, they don't all have rigid body on them. The buildings don't need rigid body, and trees don't need it. But this is only if you want to move, move things around by using physics. You'll notice in this rigid body area, there is a gravity scale. So right now, this is falling at 9.8 meters per second squared. I actually want this to fall a little slower. So I'm going to change this gravity from, instead of 1, I'm going to make it 0.1. And you'll see that it sort of falls a little slower. Maybe that's too slow. Maybe 0.2. We'll probably mess with this number a little bit as we go.
Jose
Yes.
has a question in the chat, and I'm not sure how to answer it.
Sure. How do you go back to the pointer? I keep getting the hand. If you're in the scene view, it depends on what you have selected, the tool you have selected. So if I have the move tool selected, it will look like an arrow, so I can select something. If I have the hand tool selected, it's trying to do this. So it depends on the tool that you're using, the icon that your cursor will be. So if you just select a different tool, like the move tool, it will look like an arrow so that you can move things around. While I have the square selected, I hit add component, and you can start typing something, RIG, and you'll see rigid body 2D there. And then what you should see in the end here is the sprite renderer and the rigid body 2D here. So there's one more thing, a couple more things I want to do. I want to change the color. Right now, instead of this being white, I sort of, in my example, I had this sort of, I don't know, pinkish color for the obstacles, and I had like a bluish color. I was going for like a 80s synthwave color scheme or something. So while I have this square selected in the hierarchy, I can click color. And you can select a different color. I'm going with these, and you can use the RGB values here. The A is the transparency, how transparent something is. Yeah, the RGB is the regular blue. You can make this whatever color you'd like. I'm going with the sort of 1980s synthwave color scheme here. Hit save if you haven't hit save in a while. And let's make sure everyone's at the point where they can hit play, and then they kind of see this thing falling from the sky here. Make sure everyone's at this point. Yeah, Jonathan, if you click on assets or sprites and hit plus here, you should see plus and then sprites square. Yeah, you can also right click, go to create, sprites, square. Okay. Is anyone not at this point where they have something dropping from the sky or top or whatever this is? Is anyone else stuck? We're going to keep building as we go, so I want to make sure everyone's kind of in the same place. I guess everyone is cool. Okay. Okay. So we have this square and we haven't done any coding yet. And what I'd like to do is you'll notice if I hit play and if I go to my scene view, I can sort of see that my square sort of falls down forever and it's falling down forever. What I'd like to do, I would like to write some code to rotate it. And I would also like to, when it goes down too far, when it's off the screen, I want to delete it. So when this goes off the screen here, I want it to sort of delete once it goes out of view. So we're going to write, we're going to write our first kind of bit of code. So in the assets folder, I'm going to click on assets and hit plus and hit folder and write scripts. So even though we're only writing a couple of things today, I'm trying to give you some good habits of organizing your projects. So I made a folder called scripts, and then while I have the scripts folder selected, I am going to click plus C# script. Now, when you do this, you need to give it a name. Don't just hit enter. It's waiting for you to give it a name. I'm going to call this obstacle. Okay. Actually, yeah, obstacle's fine. I'll call it obstacle. Keep it short for now. So I have the script called obstacle. And if you wait a moment, you'll see it sort of shows some stuff on the right side here. Once it sort of kicks in and you see this little bit of stuff there, you can drag this script onto the square on top. So if I click on this, I can drag it onto square. You'll see square highlights. And then now, if I click on square, you'll see square has sprite renderer, rigid body 2D, and you'll see your script there, obstacle script, right? So we keep adding things to this object. So it has a sprite renderer, the rigid body, and you should see obstacle script here. If you don't see your script here, you can also hit add component and start typing in the name of your script, obstacle, and it will add the script there. So the important thing is that you have the sprite renderer, the rigid body 2D, and then this obstacle script here. When you have those things there, if you double click on obstacle, it will open up, hopefully, Visual Studio. If you don't have Visual Studio, it might, if you don't have Visual Studio, it might open up just a plain text editor. That's okay. You won't get all of the coloring and stuff today, but you can still enjoy this workshop. You can also use Visual Studio Code, which is a little bit more lightweight. You can also use Visual Studio Code. If anything asks you to install anything, don't install anything, just follow along. If it says there's a new version of Visual Studio out, or Visual Studio wants to, you just stick with what we have for today. It's plenty for today, and we can kind of move forward and do stuff. So I have the code open for obstacle. Your file should be named obstacle.cs. You should see class obstacle here. And then you'll see that there are two functions. One is called start and one is called update. Start is called when your scene starts, or technically when the object is created. Update is called every frame. If my computer is running at 60 frames a second and your computer is running at 90 frames a second and someone else is running at 15 frames a second, this update will happen 60 times a second, 15 times a second, 90 times a second, and so on. So update is called as often as your computer can call it, based on what's on the screen and everything that's happening. So update is called every frame. It could be 60 on my computer, 90 on your computer, 30 on another computer, and so on. So inside of update, we're going to add a line of code here. And I'm writing transform with a lowercase t dot, make sure it's lowercase, rotate 0, 0, 60 times time dot delta time. If you're hearing a lot of sirens, they're not coming to take me away. I just live near like 3 hospitals right now. So this word transform, lowercase t, if I go to Unity again, if I click on square, you'll notice at the top of my object, there is something there called transform. And it has position, rotation, and scale. Everything has position, rotation, and scale. Everything has a transform. So in my code, I can type transform dot, and there's a bunch of things I can do. I can rotate something, and there's, I could scale something. There's a bunch of other things that we can do with that. When I say transform.rotate, capital R there, this is the X, Y, and Z rotation, okay? So if you could imagine, this might be kind of funny, if you can see me, right? So if I had the X-axis going through me, if I did an X rotate, I would be sort of tumbling forward. So if you're rotating on the X-axis, it's as if you have, it's like one of those Ron Popeil, like, what do you call it, ovens, where there's like a rotisserie thing, right? It's like, so you imagine if there was like the X-axis going through me and I was rotating on the X-axis, I would be sort of tumbling towards you forward. If we have the Y-axis, if I rotate on the Y-axis, you can imagine the Y-axis going through me like a top. And if I was to, I can't dance, but if I was a ballerina of some kind or some other dancer and I was gonna rotate on the Y-axis, I would be sort of turning left to right. The Z-axis is going into the screen. So positive Z is into the screen. So if I rotate on the Z-axis, that means I'm gonna kind of do like a cartwheel or something, which I also will not demonstrate today. I will not do a cart, but if you could imagine me turning that way, that's what the Z-axis would be. So here in 2D, we really can't rotate on X and Y. We just have the Z, which is going into the screen. So the 60 means 60 degrees. And the reason I'm multiplying it times delta time is delta time is the amount of time that has happened since the last frame. So if 1/60th of a second has gone by since the last frame, this will rotate this, like 1 degree or something like that. If on your computer, you're going at 120 frames a second, then 120th of a second has gone by, and that will rotate it a little bit less, but since you have more frames, it'll all be the same. So the whole point of this times delta time thing is to make it so on my computer and your computer and that person's computer, the rotation is the same speed. If I didn't have this here, then technically, if your computer runs faster than me, you'll rotate faster than me. But this sort of harmonizes the speed of the thing here. So I'm gonna hit, you don't want someone in a game who has a faster computer to be able to run faster than you, or fly faster than you, or do stuff faster. You want it to be kind of synchronized. So here, this will sort of rotate it 60 degrees. And if you hit save, and go back to here and hit play, what you should see happen is you should see this square sort of rotating as it's falling. Let's hit save and make sure everyone is up to this point. I'll go back to the script, and we're going to add some more code to the script. Think rotisserie, think ballerina, think great, yeah. Okay, the other problem we had is if I hit play here, is that our square sort of lives forever. Make sure your game is not playing when you're making changes. Make sure it's not playing. So an obstacle, we're going to add a little bit of code here that says if transform dot position dot y is less than maybe -7, let's say, destroy game object. Okay, let me run this just to make sure I'm not making this up and this works. I'm going to run this. I'll go back to the code in a second. So now if you watch, when I look at this, whoops. If you watch, it will sort of fall and then it's gone. If I stop playing, it's back there again. So what should happen is when you run this, this should fall. And it's gone. Let's make sure everyone is up to this point. I'll bring the code back up. In fact, we don't need any of this other code here. I can sort of clean this up. Watch the amount of squigglies that you have on your stuff here. Okay. So far, so good, I think. Everybody's having a good time. Okay, so the next thing, oh, yes, bring back the code, please. Yeah, I don't know if you've, whoever hasn't programmed or has programmed before, I've been programming for a very long time and I'm still like, oh, thank goodness this works. Wow. I still get excited when my code works and I've been doing it for a long time. So. Make sure you have the right amount of squiggly brackets and stuff. Okay. Now, we have this obstacle here. I am, let's add in our player. Let's add in our player. I think what I want to do is let's bring in our player. So I am going to, I think instead of square, this being called square right now, I'm going to click, if you click on the name inside the hierarchy and sort of move your mouse around, or you can right click and go to rename, I'm going to call this obstacle. Just so that my obstacles are called obstacles instead of like square or something like that. So I just renamed, I clicked on my square at the top here and I just called it obstacle. I'm going to hit save. Yeah, hit save, please hit save. Please hit save, go to file, then save. Let's bring in our player. So I'm going to go to sprites where I have that triangle waiting for me. And I am going to bring this triangle into my scene here. And if I go to my game view, I can sort of see where this triangle is. I don't know if this might be too high or too low. I might have just got lucky and found a great spot for it right away. You can click on the move tool and move your player around, you know, maybe see where you want them. So here is, I brought the triangle on, and I think I want to make, you'll notice for the triangle, it's named triangle. I am going to right click and go to rename. You can move your mouse around. I'm going to call this player. So I have something called obstacle and something called player. And instead of this default white color here, I am going to click on that. And I, again, am going for my sort of 80s synthwave colors. You're welcome to choose whatever colors you'd like. Yeah, don't forget to check on your obstacle, as Allison is saying. Make sure your obstacle has the obstacle script attached. So we have the player here. I made them this blue color, and I am also going to hit add. So on the player now, I'm going to hit add component, and I want to add the rigid body to the player also, but I want to set the gravity to 0. I do not want my player to fall. I want them just to kind of sit there, but I still want to be able to sort of move them around and do stuff with them. So I added the rigid body to my player and I set the gravity scale to 0. And at this point, if you hit play, you will notice that this, your square, and it might pass right through your player. We're going to work on some of that stuff in a little bit. So our player has the rigid body on it. And now what I want to do is I want to write a script so that we can move the player around. So what's great about Unity is it gives us all of these components we can use, the rigid body and the sprite renderer and all these kind of things. But in order to make something a game, we actually need to do some coding. We can't make a game without doing some type of coding and gluing all these things together. So let's go to scripts. Inside of scripts, I am going to hit plus and go to C# script, and we're going to name this script player. Make sure you name this script player. And if you wait a moment, you'll see some code show up here. And then you can drag the script onto player. And if you check player, you should see sprite renderer, rigid body 2D, and the player script. We're going to open up the player script, and then we'll just double check that everyone is in the same place. Make sure, by the way, that you are not in play mode. Make sure you don't have the play button down while you're editing. Make sure that this is not blue or something. Make sure you're not playing. If you edit while the game is playing, it won't save your changes. So if you had the game playing and brought the square in, you'll lose it because it won't save your changes. So make sure the game is not playing when you're making changes. Yeah, so the player has a rigid body with gravity set to 0, and we have our player script. I am going to go into the player script. And at the top here, we are going to add some code here. So in the top, I'm going to write sort of before start, I'm going to write, I'll do this. Vector 3 move. And I'm going to write float speed equals 4. And if you want your player to move faster, you can change the speed. Inside of update, I'm going to actually get rid of start for now. Inside of update, we're going to write move equals vector 3.0. So move is how do we want to move this frame? Are we moving this frame? So I'm sort of setting it to 0. I'm going to check if the keys are being held down, and if they are, then we'll move or not move. If input get key code.a, this is like if the letter A is pressed. Get key means is it being held down? So in the game, you're not hitting like A to move left. You just hold it down and you sort of slide to the left. You hold D and you slide to the right. We all do the time warp again. Move equals minus transform.right. What transform.right is the direction that means right to you right now. So me looking at you right now, right to me means one thing. If I was turned, right would mean something new now. So right is what is currently right to me. Negative right means the opposite of right, which is left. There is no transform.left for whatever reason. There's transform.right. So negative transform.right means left.
Maybe we should pause for a second. It looks like quite a few people are having issues.
Sure.
And I'm not sure what their error messages are.
Okay. Let's look at
It looks like it's still relating to the obstacle though.
Okay. Let's look at the obstacle script here. All right, so let's pause here, and let's help a few people out. Let's do one at a time. Yeah, so let's see. Okay, so if your obstacle isn't rotating, if you click on obstacle, make sure you're not in play mode right now. You should see On the right side, sprite renderer. After that, you should see rigid body 2D. After that, you should see obstacle script. If you don't see obstacle script here, it means you didn't attach the script that makes it rotate here. So if you click add component, you should be able to add your obstacle script. You can start typing obstacle and add it. I just did that without sharing my screen. Let me share my screen. Let's see if we helped. All right. That worked for you? The font colors might be different, and it might depend on, if you just have the plain text editor pop up, then it's not going to have the syntax coloring. If Visual Studio didn't open, but just like a default text editor, you're not going to get the syntax coloring. Ramesh, you might need, I don't know if you need to like restart Visual Studio or one of those kind of things. I think for now, just follow along. I think to get the syntax highlighting, there might be a component you need to, if you're on Windows, you might need to install, if you're on Windows, you can go to the Visual Studio setup, and then there is a like C# for Unity thing that you might need to install. If you already had Visual Studio installed. Okay. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to the player script. And what's good is like we, you know, I am recording, so we'll have the recording available. And then I'll email some people. I'll email everybody, you know, the YouTube link or wherever the video ends up. So I'll move to the players. I'm going to move to the player script. Corinna, can you select all here from obstacle CS, like hit copy, and then for instance, if I paste this, like it should be like that. This is actually
yeah, I'm gonna try that.
Okay.
So I cut and paste basically?
Yeah, I just went to obstacle CS, I just selected it all, copy, and then I just pasted it into the chat window.
All right, let's see.
Yeah, that's actually good for everyone. If you're having a problem, this is, the code is very short that we're writing, so you can actually fit it in the chat window if you need to. It's probably, it'll be really a lot faster for us to help out.
And then we can also see if the error is with the code or if it's with something in Unity.
Mm-hmm. If anyone else is having a problem right now, you can do the same thing and then we can just check it out.
It doesn't transfer like this to.
You can't paste in there?
No, it only goes all in one line now. So
Can you copy and paste mine into yours? Can you hit?
because it's on the screen. I tried from the chat window. I just tried pasting it.
No. Can you copy mine from the chat window and paste it onto yours?
Correct. That's exactly what I just tried to do. And it all goes all in one line instead of into like 20 lines.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And can you paste yours into the chat window?
Well, sadly now I lost it.
Hit Control Z. Hit Control Z.
Control what?
Control Z or Command Z or whatever. Like undo, you know?
Let's try that. Okay. I'm copying mine.
You know, I'm going to start typing the code for the other thing so people can follow my code, but then we can also help you in a way. Okay. I am, sure. Sure. Here's the code.
Is everyone else good? If you're having any issues, just put it in the chat.
Okay, so I'll explain the code I have in Player and what's going on there. And Allison, you can help out. Corinna, I think is her name. Okay.
Yep, I'm taking a look.
Awesome. All right, thanks. So inside of Player, what I have here is I'm saying if they're holding down the A key, I want to move to technically the left, which is the minus right. If I am holding down the D key, I want to move to the right. And then inside of fixed update, so fixed update is like update, but fixed update is update for physics. So the physics gets updated 10 times a second, no matter how fast your computer is. It's not simulating physics all the time. So fixed update is when physics happen. And whenever we want to add force to something, we want to push something, move something, add thrust or something, where we do that inside of fixed update whenever we want to do some stuff with physics. So inside of fixed update, I have this code here. It's kind of a gross line of code. Get component, and then there's the alligator mouth, the less than rigid body. I could actually increase my font size a bit might be helpful. Get component, a rigid body 2D, and then I want to tell, basically I'm trying to talk to the rigid body component that's attached to me. I'm telling it to move position, transform.position plus, and I have move, which is the direction I want to move, times my speed, which is 4, times, and I have something here called time.fixed delta time. This will, again, it's just making sure that everything will move at the same speed. If I hit save here, I'm gonna hit save and hit play, and just to make sure that I'm not lying and everything is good here. If I hold down A and D, you can see that I can move from left to right.
Stephen's having a problem where his obstacle is disappearing, and I'm not sure what's up with that.
So Stephen, right now, is the game not playing? You're not in play mode. The game isn't trying to play right now, right? It's
Right.
not. So this icon is just blank like this, right?
Yeah.
If you go to scene right now, is the obstacle listed in the hierarchy?
Yes. It's in
So
the scene.
And you can see it here, right?
Yeah.
So, okay. What is its position right now? X, Y, and Z?
Okay, let me just get right there. I have X at 0, 4, 0.
Okay, rotation 0, 0, 0.
Yes,
And scales 1, 1, 1.
right.
And you can see it right now, right?
Yep.
Okay. If you go to rigid body, what's the gravity scale set at?
Gravity scale 0.2.
And is the mass 1 and this is 0 for drag and 0.5?
Yeah.
Do you have the script attached to it right now or no? The
Yes.
script. Can you check the box to turn off the script? Like this little check box, you can just turn it off for now.
Okay,
If you hit play, does it still stay there or does it go away?
let me just see. Bum, bum. It's there.
Okay, so there's something wrong with the script that's making it disappear.
Right.
Okay, cool. Can you copy and paste your script into the window?
Yes. Let me, that's the obstacle script. And
yeah, the code for the key code.
did it come in?
Let's. You have a semicolon after the parenthesis by the -7.
Right, shouldn't be there.
Yep.
Okay,
You're basically telling it to destroy instantly.
right. I got it. Thank you.
Sure.
Let me, just to make sure, let me just
Mhm.
Save it.
Mhm.
Wait, let me just go by and save this.
Mhm.
And then let me just run this, play it. Yeah, back. Thank you.
No problem.
Herman, can you pull the script back up for a minute?
Sure. The player or the obstacle? This is everything for obstacle. We're not touching this at all for the rest of this is everything for the obstacle script. We won't touch this obstacle script at all for the rest of the thing.
Okay.
And that's sorry, I was talking. That's fair. Just so everybody knows. Everybody knows this is it for obstacle script. We're gonna work on the player next. Here.
No more obstacles.
No more, thank you.
If only.
You've been hanging around me too long. You're just making bad programming puns now.
You think this is just starting now?
I recommend graduating. Getting out of here.
Obstacle code one more time.
Going into the real world? I don't know.
This is the code for player.
If I want to change the key code from A and D to arrow keys,
Yeah.
what is the key code for that?
Left arrow, dot right arrow. You can also make both work. You could do or input. You can do both if you want. Okay, let's make sure everybody has a moving player. So here is the player's code. I just copy and pasted the code for the player into the chat. So you might be able to select that and paste it into your thing. Cool. So again, at this point, make sure everyone's at this point. We're almost starting to have a game actually. Make sure you hit save on everything. Please hit save on your scene. Hit save in Unity. Hit save in your code. If your player has the player script attached, you should be able to hit play and move your player on the arrow with whatever keys you have it as. I'm going to put mine back to A and D. It's just a little easier for me with my setup here. Okay. So everyone should be at about this point now. Again, I have the player code copied into the chat, and I have it here if you want to look at it. And yeah, you can make this left arrow, right arrow if you want to. If you think your player is too slow, you can increase the speed from 4 to 5 or something else. We're writing in C#, by the way. I know a lot of you have experience with Java. C# has everything I like about Java and everything I like about C in like one language. But it's you'll notice it looks a lot like Java and C, kind of. Okay, so we want to, there's a couple things we need to do. We don't know when our player and our triangle have collided. That's a problem. And we want to make something that generates tons of obstacles. So in order to detect if two things have collided, we need to add something called a collider. So if I click on obstacle and go to add component, there is something called a box collider 2D. And a box collider is what it sounds like. It's a collider shaped like a box. You may have played a game or you might have seen people complain about something's hitbox, that its hitbox is too big, or the player, there's a box around the player, but humans aren't shaped like boxes. We're shaped like human shape. So if the boxes aren't right on something, then you're like hitting the air and stuff like that. Our object is shaped like a box. So the box collider will work perfectly for this one. So we can, again, I went to add component and I added something called a box collider 2D to my obstacle. For my player, I also want to add a component, but instead there is something called a polygon collider 2D. So instead of the player having a box around it and getting upset when we're just like a pixel off, for the player, I can add something called a polygon collider. And this polygon collider will do its best to fit the shape of your object. So this is a triangle, it actually fits really well. You can maybe even see a little green border, kind of added a little, it's kind of hard to see on my screen share, but there's a little tiny green border around your object. So the obstacle has a box collider 2D and the player has a polygon collider 2D. If our player was shaped maybe more like a spaceship with like little wings and things, it would try to fit around the edge as best it can with a very simple polygon. Now we should see happen, and it's going to be wrong at first. Hit save, please hit file, then save. Now if I run this, we're gonna see something really funny happen. This is going to hit my player, and it's going to, it's gonna start moving them around and doing some funny things. And we want that to not happen. So again, if I hit play right now, you'll see, it starts turning and moving and, doing some kind of stuff there. So we're going to fix that. While we have the player selected, you'll notice on the collider, there is a checkbox that says is trigger. And a trigger is not a physical collider like a wall that you hit, but it's rather more of like a sensor. So I don't want these to collide and have them stop each other. I just want to know when they collided. It's almost like if you were, maybe in some game when you walk through a doorway, all of a sudden some creatures start to appear. There is basically a trigger there that you passed through that made some event happen. If you are about to walk into a door and it opens for you, it's kind of like there is some trigger there that lets you know you passed through something or collided with something. If we want to be able to jump and stand on something, then we would not check this. So we're gonna check is trigger on the player because we just want to know when they've collided with something, but we don't actually want the player to like block something or have something sit on top of them or something else. So I'm checking is trigger on the player. And when I click on obstacle, I am also going to check is trigger. So I basically just want to, on the collider, is trigger. So on the obstacle and the player, I just want to know when they've collided. I don't want them to actually like be able to stand on a table or something. When I hit play, you'll notice that they pass through each other again. Okay, so we added a box collider to obstacle and we added a polygon collider to player. And then we set those colliders to both be just triggers so we can detect when something happens. I want you to select obstacle, and you'll notice it says on the right tag, and it says untagged. So I want to tag this object as being an obstacle. And you could tag something as being a power-up. You could tag something as being a coin. You can tag something as being a hazard in some way. And then I can say, if the player collided with a power-up, then give them this. If the player collided with a coin, play a coin sound and then give them a point. If the player collided with the exit, load the next level, stuff like that. So on obstacle, where it says tag, I'm going to click here and go to add tag. And when I go to add tag, it says tags and it might say the list is empty. I'm going to hit plus and again type obstacle, and pay attention to how you spell it here because we need the same spelling later. All right, so again, I clicked on obstacle, I went to tag, I went to add tag, and I hit the plus sign and I put obstacle there as a tag. Now that I have obstacle in my list of tags that I can apply to different objects, I am going to click on obstacle, and where it says tag untagged, I'm going to choose obstacle. So my obstacle should be tagged as an obstacle. It's kind of funny because we only have one thing, but if we had different kinds of obstacles of different shapes and sizes, and we could just say that's an obstacle, that's a floor, that's a platform, that's a coin, that's a whatever, and then we can just base things on what they're tagged as. So make sure your obstacle is tagged as obstacle, that you see the word obstacle next to tag. You go to click on obstacle, click on tag, go to add tag. Where it says tags, there should be a little plus sign. You can hit that plus sign and then add this obstacle tag. We're going to, so everyone should be at the point where they see this obstacle tag, and they should be at the point where we see this thing pass through the other thing. Now, in the player script, make sure you still have that last squiggly there. After fixed update, I am going to write void. It's very important you spell this correctly. On trigger enter 2D with a capital O, capital T, capital E. And it should write something like collider 2D collision there. So basically, I'm saying when my trigger, when something has entered a trigger, and there is enter, so maybe when I first get hit with something, something happens. There is on trigger stay. That is for every frame you are inside that trigger still. So if I have some fire and I want that player to take damage every frame that they're standing in that fire, I can use on trigger stay. There is on trigger exit. So if when the player leaves that trigger, you want something to happen, maybe when they get to the other side of a door, you want something to happen, you can use on trigger exit. On trigger enter is when the collision happens. If collision tag equals, and make sure it's the same spelling, and you have two equal signs. For now, we're just gonna log game over. And just to show you what this will do, I'm gonna hit save here, and I'll go back to the code in a second. If I watch my console window, and this is, I just wanna make sure we have everything working here. If I hit play, if you look at my console, hello. If you look at my console window, you'll see that it should say game over in my log. And later on, we're gonna make that actually do something. But for now, it's just printing game over. So if this works, our next step is to generate tons of random obstacles. We'll just generate all these random obstacles. And then we'll add like a, some music or something. And then we can add some kind of game over pop-up or something like that. So at this point, you should be able to hit play, and then it should say game over when these things collide. Yes, I agree with Allison. Is everyone doing okay? Again, you can copy and paste your code inside the chat and we can take a look.
Do we need to import anything for this? Because I'm not getting that automatic import. I have to type it out.
At the top here, it should say using system collections, using systems collections generic, and using Unity. I mean, especially it should say using Unity engine.
Yeah, it's there.
Okay. So I'm sorry, who was asking the question just now?
Jalpa.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you might need to put Unity engine.debug. You might need to do this if your Visual Studio
Okay.
is confusing like some other library or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, I think it's doing that.
Okay. Okay. Is anyone not at the point where they hit play and it says in the console, finally have a happy message on our console window. It says, game over. Is anyone not at this place? Yeah, Jalpa, you're okay now, right? Still didn't. Is there an error or does it not work?
There's an error. It says debug is an ambiguous reference between Unity engine.debug and system.diagnostics.
But even when you write Unity engine.debug.log there?
Yeah, I hope I saved it there. Let me try again.
Try hitting save and run it again.
Oh yeah, I think I forgot to save it.
Okay, cool. All right. So we're going to do something pretty major next here. We're going to click on assets. So what we want to do now is I want to create something that generates the obstacle, that generates random obstacles. So the idea is that the obstacle is sort of like a template that we can instantiate or create, like an object that you would, create on the fly, or have a loop of some kind and create some of these objects and that kind of thing. So what we're going to do next, it's okay if it says game over twice. That's all right. It just might be it's fine. So what we're going to do now is in our assets folder, where our assets folder is, we're going to hit plus and create a new folder, and we're going to call this folder prefabs. And prefabs are sort of prefabricated things. It's sort of where you keep your template of something. So if my game has all these different kinds of monsters and things, I would have all of these prefabs, which is the object with the collider on it and the script on it and the tag on it and whatever else it does. So I want to go to the prefabs folder, and everyone has to be really careful about this next part. Be really careful about this next part. I have this prefabs folder, and what's next is I have obstacles selected in the top, and you notice my prefabs folder is empty. I want to drag from the hierarchy on top down into this prefabs folder, and you'll see it'll stop for a second, but there we go. So you'll notice obstacle turns blue. So when it turns blue, it's sort of letting you know that this is a prefab, that this is a, sort of a pre-made thing. So make sure that you sort of see the obstacle in the prefabs folder and that you have this blue, your obstacle sort of has this blue cube to it. Yep, it's like a template. Okay. Once I have this prefab here and it's blue, I can delete it from my scene. So make sure that this is blue and that you have it below. And then once you have that, you can right click and you can delete it from your scene. And then from then on, we're going to generate the template that we saved. Okay. I want to make sure everyone is at this point where we have this obstacle here and we have gotten rid of that. Is your game running right now? Make sure your game is not running right now when you're doing all this editing, that it is stopped. If you right click on something or control click if you're on a Mac or whatever, you can go to delete and you can delete something from your hierarchy, but only delete it once you've made it a prefab and you have the prefab there. Don't delete it. Don't delete it without making it a prefab. Make the prefab first and then you can delete it. And then we're going to spawn the obstacle, like a player would spawn somewhere, something would spawn somewhere in a game. We can spawn the obstacle. Okay. So if you are editing while play is on, it doesn't save the edits. You'll lose your edits when you stop playing. If it's playing, what's handy is if something is playing, I could like pick up my player and move them to the goal, or I can move something out of the way. Yeah. It is okay to delete it once you have it in the prefabs folder. Okay, so next I want to create sort of the thing that is going to generate what's going to generate the obstacle. So in the hierarchy, I'm going to hit plus, and you'll see there is an option to create empty. So in the hierarchy, I'm going to create an empty game object, and I'm going to name this game controller. So the game controller is sort of an object that sort of oversees everything. Put it at 0, 0, 0. So game controller is sort of like a overseer, manager of the game. It's going to spawn our objects. When it's game over, we're going to tell it the game is over, stuff like that. So I made an empty, I hit plus, and then I hit create empty, and I created something called game controller. Now, I want to go to I want to go to scripts, and I want to hit plus C# script in my scripts folder. Make sure you're in your scripts folder. I want to hit plus and C# script and call this game controller. All one word, no spaces. All one word, no spaces. So I'm making a script called game controller that is all one word, no spaces. When the script kind of kicks in on the right, you can drag game controller onto game controller. And the only thing attached to game controller will be the game controller script. I hit plus in hierarchy. I went to create empty, and I made an empty game object, and I named it game controller. And then I created a script called game controller, and I dragged game controller script. And now we're going to go into game controller. And then here, actually don't need a lot of this. We just need a variable here, public game object, and we can just call it obj. Don't use the word object, it's like taken already. Obj is the object we're going to spawn. Don't use the word obstacle because we use that word already. You can just use the word obj. Public game object obj. And then inside of, we're going to add another variable here, and we'll call this float countdown equals, maybe we'll say 1 f. So basically every second I want to count down, and when my countdown reaches 0, I want to create an object. Inside of update, I want to say countdown minus equals time dot delta time. So this will remove the amount of seconds that has passed since the last update. So after 60 frames, for instance, a second will have gone by. If count down is less than or equal to 0, we want to sort of randomly place the object. I'm going to write var pos equals new vector 3 random dot range. -6 to 7 is like -6 to +6. And I think if I put it at maybe about 10 or yeah, or even 7 or so, maybe 10. 0. So basically I want a random position. So I'm making a position that I want to spawn this thing. And I want it to be from -6 to +6. That's from left to right. 10 is like off the screen. It's too high. It's off the screen. So my idea is to spawn sort of out of camera view. 0 is the Z coordinate. This is 0. Var rotation is quatern. This is going to be a really crazy thing. This is the rotation to spawn at. It just means default rotation. It's a very long way of saying default rotation. And then I can just say instantiate obj position, rotation, that's it. Oh, one more thing. Countdown equals 1. So the countdown, when it gets to 0, I am picking a random position, just saying default rotation. I'm spawning this object and I'm saying set the countdown back to 1. And then this will count down again. 1 second might be too much. It maybe should be half a second or a quarter of a second, but we'll see in a minute. There's one more thing we need to do, and this will actually start looking like a game. It doesn't really matter what folders things are in. They can really be in any folders. I just wanted to kind of give you some good habits, hoping you do more of this stuff, but they can really be in any folder. It doesn't really matter. So here is the game controller script, and we need to do one more thing here, just to show you what happens. If I go to game controller now, you'll see, if I go to game controller in the hierarchy, you see where it says in the in the hierarchy, it says obj and it says none for obj. If I drag my obstacle from the prefabs where it says none, you should see it highlight. Now it knows what to generate. And just to give you an example, if I hit play now, I should have something like this. Maybe 1 second is too long. Maybe I'll do half a second. I'll do 0.5 and I'll make this countdown. I'm gonna make both countdowns 0.5. So it will be half a second between generating things. There we go. That worked much better. Make sure when you click on game controller that where it says obj, that you dragged your prefab onto here so that it sort of links, it forms a link here so it knows what to generate. I will copy and paste my game controller code. Make sure you have the word public before the word game object, and that's what makes it show up.
I'm sorry, where do I have to drag the obstacle inside the game controller?
Yeah, so if you click on game controller, if you have the variable declared as public, then you can see it inside the inspector here, right?
Uh,
So you
I don't have to drag anything there, right? It would just show up on its own?
you have to drag your prefab there. So right now it should say obj, like if it says, if this says none, right? It doesn't know, so I'm gonna drag my prefab here and now it knows to generate that prefab.
Okay, so I have to add the script as a component, right?
Yeah, the script should be there. Yeah. Yeah. If you don't have if you have this, you need to hit add component, and you can add your game controller script, and then you can drag in this component.
Okay. Okay, got it.
Okay. How's everybody else doing? Is your game controller spelt wrong, Jonathan? Is your file name with one L and your script has two L's? See on mine, I have two L's and my file is also spelt with two L's. These need to be the same spelling.
Yeah, I got 2 L's.
When you copy and pasted it just now, there was just one L though.
That's what it showed up, but I got in the actual thing, it says game controller with 2 L's.
Inside, what's the file name?
Prefab?
No. See the file name on top? Mine says gamecontroller.cs.
Hold on. Yeah, it's with 1 L for some reason.
Yeah, so all you need to do is where it's here, just change this to be one L also, so it's the same thing. It might be easier just to change this instead of changing the file name. Vivian, what's yeah, if you can cut and paste your code, Vivian, or whatever, or you might have the same problem with the file name and the thing.
If you spell things wrong, just spell them wrong consistently.
Words to live by. Vivian, is your file spelt the same way? No space? In the name? And what's the error you're getting? Can you copy and paste your error? Yeah, if you're getting like a null error, the null error is because there's no object associated with the thing. Yep, unassigned reference is you need to drag your prefab where it says obj. Yep, so if you look at game controller should have your script game controller attached. And where it says obj, if it says none here, you need to go to your prefabs folder, and then you can click and drag your prefab and it will sort of lock into that place there. And then if you hit save, make sure you hit save everywhere. If you hit run right now, you should see these sort of squares falling from the sky. And you'll see if I touch one of these, it will, you know, the counter on how many times the game is over will sort of, you know. Great. No, the game controller is just the script attached to it. And you should have, your obstacle is your prefab that's here. So this is what game controller should look like. Is it like, if you don't go to your script, make sure that you have the word public before the word game object. Having the word public there makes it available in that inspector. Yeah, it should be public game object. The public, again, yeah, makes it obsessive. Here's the, okay, so we have some of these things falling. I would like to keep going maybe for another 30 minutes because we kind of started a little late. So there's a couple of other things we can do for our game. It doesn't really end. It's sort of missing a lot of you know, features and stuff. So I think we can add a few more things in here. If you have an unassigned reference error, that means you need to drag your prefab to the, where it says obj. If it says none, you need to drag your prefab there. Yeah, I'm gonna put up the recording later and stuff, yeah. I want to add in a few more things for our game. So there is, let's see. I think what I would like to do is when the game ends, I would like to show some kind of pop-up text or you know, do something when the game is over. So in the hierarchy, I am going to hit plus UI, and I am going to add something that is a panel. And what we can do is, you'll see this panel is sort of overlaying my screen. I want to, maybe I'll change the size. Yeah. I want to make it so that when the game is over, it sort of pops up something that is a sort of an overlay. So what I did is I went inside of hierarchy, I went to plus, and then I went to UI, and then I went to panel. And it's adding this sort of, it's called a panel here. Okay. For the color, I want to change this to, I'm going to change the color a little bit, and you'll kind of see what I'm going to do in a moment. I'm going to make the color 7777. Yeah, something like that. And then I want to add some text on here that says game over. So if you right click on panel or control click on panel, you should be able to go to UI and then text. And you'll see it has a very small thing for text. And the first thing I want to do is, so I right clicked on panel and I went to UI, then text. So I now have text as sort of a child of this panel. And now, first, when I have text selected on the right, I want to go to color and maybe change the color to white. So I just made the text white. There is a bunch of things here to center it. I'm gonna click on the middle box for centering in the middle and the middle for centering it sort of top to bottom. And then I'm gonna change the text to say game over. And we can bring in fonts and things, but I'm gonna leave that alone. And I'll make the, let me see, let me check the font size here. 48, and then what if I make the box? There we go. So I made the box, let's see here. Yeah. I made the text box, I made it size like 600 by 600. It's way bigger than it needs to be, but it's fine. 600 by 600, this can probably even be like 300. Yeah, 600 by 300 is fine. I made the font size 48. I wrote game over, and we can find fonts. Just to like give you like a quick thing, if I went to, as a for instance, fonts.google.com, I could, you know, type game over here, and then I could look for, I'm just going to do a quick, just so you can kind of see. I can look for some font that I like, and I can hit download. And then if I wanted to, I could, you know, bring this font into Unity, and then I could use this font with my text if I wanted to. I just wanted to show quick. So you know, you can find fonts and change up these fonts and stuff like that. I'll just leave the default font for now. Okay. So you'll notice that this says game over. The other thing that I want to maybe add is a button to restart the level. You can, if you click on panel, you can change the size, you can change top and bottom. You can change, oh, why is the UI? The canvas is the size of your screen. So it might be really huge. It's very different than like, this is like this tiny thing. The canvas is like kind of equivalent to your screen. If you want to, for instance, I can click panel. If I'm in the scene view, you can use the move tool and you can move your panel around. You can click on text and you can use the move tool to move the text around. And you can see how it would look. Yeah, we're going to make it so this hides and then it shows when the game is over. I want to add a button, so I'm going to right click on panel. I'm going to right click on panel and go to UI and then button. And for this button, you'll notice the button has, if I sort of right click on, if I click on the little, yeah, so I right clicked on panel, went to UI and then button. If I click the triangle next to button, it says text. And then right now it says, if I click on that, it says the word button. I can change this to restart. If you want to, you can change the width and the height of the button. You could change its Y position. If you put something in here like 10 or 20, it can move it minus 20. You can sort of change the position of the button if you want to. Hit save if you haven't hit save in a while. Doesn't need to be perfect right now. I just want to show you how to wire these things up. You can make it nicer later. Okay. Now that we can see all of this here, you'll notice next to, how do we move this? You'll notice next to panel, where it says canvas, then panel here, there's a little checkbox next to panel. And if I check this box, you'll see that it sort of hides it. And if I check the box, it sort of brings it back. So I want to check once I'm happy with this and this looks how I want it, I want to check this box and just sort of turn it off. Hit save. Now, I want to go to the script for game controller. And we're going to have to wire a couple of things here. Inside of game controller, I want to add something. Public game object, and I'll write the word panel here with a lowercase p. Public game object panel. Then we're going to add something here. So we're going to add another method, and we're going to write public void game over. Panel set active true. Okay, so basically on game controller, I created a variable called panel, and then public game object panel, and then I created something called game over, and that is setting that panel to true. I'm setting it active, so I'm sort of flipping that checkbox programmatically. Okay, so just a line of code here, public game object panel, and then public game over, public void game over, and it has panel set active true. Now, inside of player, where we logged, remember inside of player, we logged game over, okay? inside of this, we are going to write when we get hit, we're going to write game object dot find game controller dot get component game controller game over. So basically, the player is telling the game controller that the game is ended. And then the game controller, and then I could probably do set active or enabled equals false. I think that will stop the player from being able to move. Let me hit save and make sure that this is correct. I'm gonna hit play. Let me make sure this will, I'll bring the code back up in a moment. I'm just gonna move around and make sure everything is happy. All right, so this looks good, this looks good. Now I'm gonna hit this, boom. Oop, I forgot to do something. On game controller, you'll see it says panel none. Panel none. So I wanna drag my panel where it says panel. So I'm kind of linking that panel I made to the game controller. If I hit save and hit run, what should happen now is if I'm moving around, we're having a good time. And then when I hit something, boom, you see this game over thing pops up. My player can't move anymore. And then we can just wire up this restart button and then we kind of have a game. So here is what the game controller looks like again. Public game object panel. At the bottom, public void game over, panel set active true. And then inside of the player, when we collide with an obstacle, I am telling the game controller that the game is over, and I am enabled equals false. I'm disabling the player script so that you can't still move left and right anymore, like you're just kind of stuck wherever you were. So this is the game controller code. This is the final player code. And when I run this, you'll see that hopefully, if everything is wired up, you'll see this pop up. If you see an unreferenced exception error, that means if you go to game controller where panel is, make sure that it doesn't say none here. You can drag panel to panel and it will sort of wire up this panel and this other panel. Make sure you hit save on everything. I need to get myself some water. I'll be back in a minute or two. So make sure you're at this point. I put the scripts in the chat. Okay. There's a couple of more things I think we should do. And then we will put our game on itch.io. There's like maybe 2 more little things I want to do. Is everyone up to this point where the panel pops up? You need to write public inside of game controller, public void game over. And you need to make sure that your game controller object is spelled game controller and the other thing is game controller. Okay. If you look on game controller, it's sort of waiting for a reference to panel. It might, just like we told the game controller what the obstacle was. So we're going to drag this panel onto the panel sort of connector on game controller. Yeah, C uses capitals for functions and camel case for variables, C#. Okay. Now, I want to wire up the restart button, as I have these crazy sirens again. I want you to go to File. I'm sorry, yeah. Go to, make sure it says public. At the top of game controller, it should say public game object obj, public game object panel.
From where do I have to drag the panel thing in the game controller?
Yeah, so if you have game controller selected here, you should see obstacle. Panel, if you see none here,
Yeah.
you can click panel, the one that you turned off
Okay,
in the canvas, and drag that panel over.
got it.
Yeah, you're sort of using this C# to sort of glue everything together, you know? You're hiding this, turning on this, spawning that. It's kind of like the C# is kind of like the bridge between the components and the objects and stuff like that. Okay. So I want to make that I want to write the code for that restart button. So let's go to File and then Build Settings. File and then Build Settings. And you'll notice inside of Build Settings, it says Scenes in Build, and there's nothing there. I want to click Add Open Scene. So we should see Sample Scene inside of Build Settings here. So I went to File and then Build Settings, and then I hit Add Open Scenes, and you should see Sample Scene there. And then now you can close this. Once you see Sample Scene there, you can close that. And then we're going to write a line of code, and we're going to go to Game Controller. Public void restart. Unity engine dot, so this is in game controller, Unity engine dot scene management dot scene manager dot load scene, and I believe it's called sample scene. And then we just need to point the button to this function. So we're making this public function, and then once it's public, the button can see this function, and then basically we're just telling the, maybe if someone got to the end of a level, we would load scene level 2, or we would make a scene called menu, and we would load scene menu or something like that. This is loading this current scene we're in, which is called sample scene. So here's the code for this function. When you go to File, then Build Settings. Yep. Add open scenes and you'll see it there. Okay, now if I go back to the button, this is sort of a tricky maneuver we need to do, okay? If I click on the button in my canvas, it says, this is a tricky maneuver here. If I click on button, I can scroll down and you'll see it says on click. So if I click on button in my hierarchy underneath canvas, it says on click and it says list is empty. I want to hit plus. Then, oh, there's a bunch of stuff here. I want to hit plus, and you'll notice it's kind of sitting here. Okay? It says none. I want you, so I went to button. I scrolled down to where it says on click. I hit plus, and you'll notice when I did that, it's just kind of sitting here. I want you to drag game controller to where it says none, obj. Okay? So I took game controller, so I dragged game controller here, and you'll notice it says game controller now, and it says no function. If I click there, I should be able to go to game controller, and then restart should be in there. So I will show this maneuver again. I went to canvas and then button. If I scroll down on button, it says on click, list is empty. I hit plus. It has a little like a placeholder now. I dragged game controller onto where it says none. Now it says game controller here. And instead of no function, if you click no function, go to game controller, and then look in the list. It's kind of alphabetical there. You should see restart. And then now if I hit save, don't forget to hit save. If I hit play, if I'm moving around, doing my thing, everything is fun, and then I hit something, it says game over, and then there's a restart button. I can click restart, and then the game will start over again. We've made a game. Let's see what questions you have. The quote is misplaced in the sample scene there. Let's see. It's kind of a game. Once I hit restart, the level should reload, and so it looks like this right now. I hit the square. It says I click restart, and we should be back to this. Now, we kind of have a game now. This is really exciting, and there's a lot of stuff we could do. I think you can click on the panel, John, and you can uncheck panel on the top right. So if I click on panel, I can sort of turn the panel on and off. So I just want to start it off, and then the script will turn it back on. I'm trying to figure out what next to do with the time, and so let me, hi everybody. So using some of our time left, what I was thinking of, I could show I don't know if you guys all have, I was going to show you how to add music, but I'm not sure if you guys did you all create like an account with Unity when you downloaded everything? Did everyone do that? Yes. Your game doesn't stop when you hit the boxes. Look at you mean your player still move? I mean, the squares are still falling, but the player should not be able to move. So let's add music in because I think this will open up some other things that you can do. Inside of Unity, make sure your game isn't playing right now. And we have this right now. If you go to Window and then Asset Store, this is going to change your life right now. If you go to Window and then Asset Store, this is the Unity Asset Store. And basically, you can buy, or you can find for free. There's plenty. We're going to use free stuff today. We're going to all free stuff. You can find 3D models, textures, code, music, sound effects, shaders, skyboxes, you know, there's all types of stuff that you can find here. So what we are going to do is, and basically if you do a search, you can filter for instance, if you might be able to scroll, for instance, if I go here, I can select music as a filter here. If I scroll down, there also is a checkbox for show free. So if you look, there's a checkbox that says free assets. So I'm going to check the box for free. Okay. So we are going to use something that says 8-bit. I believe it's 8-bit music free, I think. Great. So you should see something that says 8-bit music free, and there's a ton of other stuff here. If I click on this, you will see that there is a box to download. I've already in preparation, I was practicing last night. I already downloaded it, but you can hit download. Then after you hit download, you can hit import. And then hit import again. And then this will actually bring it into your project. So I searched for 8-bit music free, click on it, hit download, then import, and then hit import again. Window, Asset Store. So if I look in my project, you see how there's a little folder here that says Cron Audio. So for instance, if I go here and go to retro, if I click on one of these, if you look on the right, I'm pointing to it, but you can't see my finger. There's a little bar, sort of, if I click on one of these sound samples, you see it's like a little double bar here. If I click on this and drag it up, it sort of opens up this, and from here, I can sort of preview these. So yeah, there's sort of this little double bar thing I had to sort of pull up. Under modern, let's see. I think I might use retro 3. or retro 1 maybe. Kind of has more of a speed feel to it. I think I might use retro 1. Let's see what the chat is like right now. Vivian, is the player able to move still? Does it print the message there about the, is there anything in the console, like any error messages, Vivian, or anything? It is printing game over though, right? If it's not printing game over, then it's not detecting the collision, which means that either your obstacle isn't tagged with the word obstacle, or the spelling of obstacle isn't exactly the same. So you should double check that your obstacle, that your prefab of, you can go to your prefab, and if you look at your prefab here, make sure it's tagged as obstacle here. Okay. So now that I imported this and I have these sound files here, I want to go to game controller. So I'm assuming everyone has downloaded something. I'm going to go to game controller and hit on, basically I'm going to add an audio component to the game controller to play the music. So if I go to game controller and then hit add component, I can add something known as an audio source. Source here. So I went to game controller, I went to game controller, and then I hit add component, and I chose audio source. And you'll notice it says audio clip none. So if you click the little circle, you can choose which audio. I'm going to use Cron Audio Retro 1. And you want to have play on wake checked. You want that checked. Play on wake means to start playing immediately. And you want to check loop. You want the music to loop if the player lasts long enough. So again, I have the audio source. By audio clip, I hit the little circle thing, and I chose what audio clip I wanted to use. And then I checked play on wake and loop. And now if I hit save, don't forget to hit save. If I run this, you'll hear that there's music, and it's amazing how much the music changes the game, how it changes the whole feel of the game. That's our game. Okay. I think what I would like to do, hi everybody. Hi all my gray squares. So I think what I could do, I think it's like a couple of things that we could do next. I'm kind of running out of time. So I could show you how to upload it to itch.io. next, we could add something like a timer in the corner or something like that. Right now, our player can just move off the screen. There's a couple of funny things there. I'm wondering if it'd be better right now to, I show you guys how to upload to itch.io in the video, that other video, right? So maybe what we'll do here is we'll add a little bit more code to not let the player move off screen. And maybe we'll add the timer in the corner. And I feel like we'll have a bit more of a complete game or something like that. Does that sound good? I don't know if anyone's going to challenge me right now to do something else. Maybe we'll do that next, and then that'll be our sort of wrap up for today. And then we can hang out. If I can, if some of you are stuck, I can maybe, I'll stop the recording and we can try helping a couple people who are stuck. So let me add a few more bits of code, and then I think that will kind of wrap up the feel of our game a bit. Inside of the player script.
Wait,
Does someone have a?
Can
Yes,
you
ma'am?
record, please? Oh, sorry, not record, but show your screen.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so in our script for player, I am going to write some code here. I'm going to say var in fixed update equals transform.position. And I'm going to say if position.x is less than -6, then position.x equals -6. If position.x is greater than 6, then position.x equals 6. And then say transform.position equals POS. That's it. And this will sort of bound our player to -6 to the left and 6 to the right. And just to show you an example, I'll bring the code back in a second. If I run this, if I move to the left, I can't go off the screen anymore. And if I try to move to the right, I can't move off the screen to the right anymore. So I'll bring that script back. Okay. Was everyone able to, was anyone not able to get the kind of the stopping the player from, so again, this is on the player script, to just stop the player from moving out of bounds. Now, we're going to add a little timer in the corner that sort of counts as long as we've stayed, as long as we've been alive for. So on our canvas, not underneath the panel, just on the regular canvas, we are going to right click or control click, go to UI, and then text. And I'm going to change the color to white here. And I am going to change the text to say 0.00. And I'll make the font size. Let me figure out a good dimension and setup for this. Oh, I wonder if maybe we'll put it in the top corner So I have my text I'm making for my score here. And you'll notice there's a little box here. It says middle center. If I click on this, I can click in the top left, and then it's basically, now the coordinates are relative to the top left corner. So if I do this, it's like my coordinates are relative to the center. Here, it's relative to the top left corner. So again, I went to Canvas, not underneath panel, but on Canvas. I right-clicked or control-click. I went to UI and then text. And then I click this little box so I can anchor it to the corner. And then now I'll just find some coordinates that work out really well. I can give them to you. And maybe I'll make the, let's see, text. 100 minus 50, 200. No, what do I need to do? One second. Oh, I see what's going on here. Can make this font size 32. Okay, sorry, I'm just kind of figuring out what coordinates we can use and stuff. Okay, so for the text box, let's do 75 or maybe 70. Yeah, 70 minus 40 with 100, height 50. And I made the font size 32. And the idea is that this counter will change. The longer we last, the higher the counter goes. Okay. So now I'm going to go to scripts and then game controller. And inside of game controller, I'm going to write bool. So I'm in game controller now. Inside of game over, I'm going to write, there's a bunch of things we need to do. First, let's do, sorry, one thing. Public Unity engine.ui.text text. So basically, I need to link that text box to the game controller. So the game controller is sort of talking to everything. So this again is inside a game controller. And I want to also add float points equals 0. So our points is like our time we've been alive. And also bool, we can just write game over with a lowercase g equals false. So basically, I only want to give the player points while the game hasn't ended. So these are the 3 new lines that we've added for our game controller. And then inside of update, I want to write if game over equals false, points plus equals time dot delta time. Text dot text equals points dot to string #0 pound. Yeah, that will give us like 2 decimal places. So if game over is false, we're going to get more points. Our points are the amount of seconds we've been alive. We're going to set the text box's text to points to string. We're just doing this is like a format, 2 decimal places kind of a line. And then we have a couple more little bits and pieces to wire up. And then inside of game over, I want to say game over equals true with a lowercase g. Notice when this is probably something your computer science professor like myself told you not to do. But I have a lowercase g and one with the capitals. Bool game over equals false. You can, if game over equals false, give me more points and display my points. If I called game over, then game over equals true. So the game is over. You know, if we want to, we can make it so it doesn't generate any more squares. So it just as an example, if I moved this squiggly here and did this, it would only, it would only generate those squares when the game is, as long as the game is running. And maybe you want the squares to still generate. You could leave them still generating all the time. That's fine too. But just as an example, you could say only generate these squares if the game is not over, you know. But I kind of like it like that. One more thing we need to do. So again, I set game over to true. And you know, we have this code here. You'll notice we have this another public variable. So we need to go to our game controller. We should see we have obstacle there, we have panel there. Now it says text, none. It needs the text object. So if I drag from text over to text, make sure it's the right one, the one that your score is in, and make sure you hit save. You should see something like this. You'll notice that that counter is going up, counting the amount of seconds I'm alive. That's a real game. Let me look at the chat. Okay. Cool. Wow, the sun has changed since I started teaching earlier. It's really there. So okay. I think that's about it for today. Let me see the code again. Sure. So for game over, for game controller, we added this public. Basically, we're saying we're looking for a reference to a text object. We said points is 0 and game over equals false. Inside of update, we're saying if the game isn't over yet, if game over is false, then give us more points and display the text. And you notice this is kind of in the squiggly brackets here. Then when game over happens at the bottom here, I have game over equals true. So basically when the player tells me, hey, it's game over, I am setting game over to true so I don't keep giving the player points. And I'm also setting that panel to active. So it's kind of just wiring all these things together. The game controller is sort of controlling the panel, the dropping objects, and the score. Okay. So there is, of course, many things we can do. We could have, you know, different size objects. I wonder if there's an easy way for me to do that. Let me see. Game controller, var go. I'm going to try to do something quick. Inside of game controller, I'm doing var go equals instantiate obj. Yeah. Float
Randomly change the scale of it.
width equals range 1 to 4. Float height equals random dot range. I'm just trying something here, random dot range. There's so much stuff we could do here. Go dot transform dot local scale equals width height comma 1. Hang on a second. Let's see if I did this wrong. Oh, new vector. Yeah, so if I run this now, what should happen is I'm basically randomizing the size of these objects. Wow. What a big difference. This game is crazy. Okay, so I'll show you what I did for that. And I think this is it for today. It's all the, you can tweak and work on these things like all day. So basically what I'm doing is the scale is, you know, the dimensions. So I'm basically just generating a random number that's 1, 2, or 3 and 1, 2, or 3. And I'm just saying the object is the, just setting that object to that width and height. There's so many other things we could do with this stuff. They could change color, they could speed up, they could generate faster. You know, there's all these random things we can add, but I think it's enough stuff for today. Now that my 2-hour workshop's a 3-hour workshop. Okay. Hi, everybody. So yes, hang on. This is the updated code for game controller, which might be too big for me to copy and paste now. I'm going to copy and paste just what's inside of update, because I think it's, the code's too big for me to paste into the chat now. So this is just the code for update for game controller. It's just the update. Okay, hey everybody. I think that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed just getting some exposure to Unity and to doing some game development. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stop recording, and this way the people watching later won't have all this other stuff in there. But keep a lookout for this new course, which is CIS, I believe 102U. It's game development for everyone. And again, it's going to be we'll be using Unity and making some games, and we're kind of starting for people who have never coded before. And the class, depending on what's going on, will either be online or in person. Just depends on what happens by the spring. I'll probably, once it hits the schedule, we'll probably set up an announcement. It's like an elective kind of it's just like if you need to fill up your credits or it's like an elective kind of a thing. It's not a prerequisite for anything or that kind of stuff. It's just like a for fun class to take, I'd say. Cool. I hope everybody had fun. Unity is a little tricky to teach over the internet, sometimes live. Thanks everybody for joining me and checking this stuff out. There are a million tutorials for Unity stuff on YouTube that you can check out. There's tons and tons of them. So definitely look around there. And on Unity's website, they have some like starter kits you can check out for making platformers and stuff like that. And there's so much other stuff to do. We can make, there's 3D games, there's multiplayer, there's so much you can do and stuff like that. So anyway, everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. And I hope I see you in another workshop. I usually do one each semester and stuff like that, or I'll see you in my class. A shout out, if any of my 121 students are here, I want to give a shout out to 121 students, past and present. Give you a little shout out. I'm not sure what I'm doing there exactly, but I'll do that. And yeah, I'll stop recording.